Yeah, that was Treason right there, and we've got Athron in the studio.
You
and,
do.
Yeah, the mic's live. It's a funny life that we have here. You know, we just started like talking about America and our paths here, our journeys of life, and they intertwine a whole lot closer than we thought.
In a very random, bizarre way.
Yeah, you know, it's like this was, you know, meant to happen. It was in the cards some way. But yeah, I was just asking, how's America treating you? How do you like it here?
Absolutely loving it. It's been a fantastic journey, and as I was saying, it's been quite an emotional bender for me. I was born in Manhattan, so I have a dual citizenship, but grown up in Australia, and lived in Bali for the last 7 years. And for a long time, I've meant to get back to New York and discover my place of birth and all that kind of thing. And I've always wanted to bring my guitar here and play some tunes. But yeah, as we were just discussing, one little side note to that was that I've never really known my father, and I've been aware that he's had kids along the way, and I sort of tracked down those kids through Facebook and eventually found them, and I've just gone through meeting them as well just recently in the last week up in Long Island. And,
awesome.
Yeah.
And here I stand. I was just explaining that we're kind of in the same place. You know, my girlfriend has been adopted, and we think we found her family, or her biological family.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, the whole intertwining of life and challenges. You know, when we think we're unique, there could be the person right next to you doing the same thing.
Yeah, and you were saying you've actually gone for the DNA test and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just classic, because basically I've got to the point I met all my brothers and sisters. They didn't know about me at all until recently when I sort of contacted them. But they're totally warm and open to it. But then after feeling accepted and brought into the family, my father still looked me in the eyes and said he didn't believe I was his son. So literally, it was like, whoa, okay, that's the next level. So we just went for a DNA test as well. I just did my one, and he's got an appointment to go in there tomorrow and do his. So it's been quite a week, just ups and downs, and sort of waiting for the news.
Yeah.
DNA test pending.
Yeah, we're riding a similar roller coaster.
Yeah. So your girlfriend's going through the same thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you're here in Greensboro.
Yeah.
And you've traveled a great distance.
I've done.
Yeah, and you were just in Manhattan. You played pianos.
Played pianos in Manhattan. Played a few gigs in Manhattan. Had some nice gigs lined up, and then a few sort of filler gigs along the way. Booking them from Bali, so it hasn't been. So you never really know what you're going to get with some of these gigs. And there's been a couple where I've rocked up, and the PA system looks like it was dug out of a fossil, some archaeological dig. So I've bought my own PA now.
Right.
But then they had some really nice gigs as well. Pianos was fantastic. Yeah, and had a fun little gig in Stanton. I don't know if you know Stanton. It's about 4 hours north
Virginia?
of here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I pronounce it Staunton.
Well, I said Staunton to someone there, and they said it's Stanton.
Yeah,
So I backed off it. Anyway.
That's your Yankee accent coming through.
Yeah, it's in the genes, mate. It's in the genes.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, I had some nice gigs along the way, and the next one is down in Charleston. So it's great to be able to pop into Greensboro, and I've noticed you played the tracks off my latest album a few times. So yeah, I thought I've got to pop in and meet you and say good day to the people.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm very glad you're here.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah. So, how long have you been involved in music?
Look, I picked up a guitar, I guess when my knees gave out when I was 15. I was a sports head, knees gave in, picked up the guitar, and sort of didn't look back. I was heavily influenced and affected by the whole grunge movement in the 90s. That was kind of my awakening to the love of music. And I guess I left home to join a rock band, that classic case scenario. Sang for a band for 4 years, and then didn't really turn full-time until, I guess, 5 years ago is when I switched to just music. And for the last, I've been playing it all my life, in bands all my life, but 5 years ago switched to just doing gigs, and I've been living off it for 5 years.
Yeah. What was your tipping point?
Well, I guess in terms of living off it?
Well, yeah, going from where it's kind of either part-time or a subsidy to where it became your sustenance.
I guess it was it was more opportunity. I mean, I've always wanted it to be the main thing, as anyone that ever picks up a guitar does.
Oh yeah.
You play one note and you're like, I want to live off this.
That's right.
But I guess 5 years ago, living in Bali, I've been living in Bali for the last 7 years in Indonesia. There's not a lot of players there, people doing what I'm doing, and I started building up gigs, and a lot of hot resorts and bars that they pay decent money for having someone, like having an expat play, as opposed to all the local musicians, and so I was able to switch to that and play I can play sort of up to 7 times a week if I want. I sort of pick and choose the gigs, so I'm very lucky in that regard living there.
Yeah.
A bit different to here, you know, where it's a big battle in big cities for getting any money for a gig, let alone recognition. So
yeah.
So I have been fortunate, yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm.
So you went from being a singer in a rock band to just kicking it solo with guitar?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, singing for the rock band. When the rock band broke up, I just started writing all my own music with the acoustic, and then I built up a band around myself in Sydney. I had a 7-piece band, 4-part harmonies and cello and horns, and really nice setup. So enjoyed that for a long time. But then when I made the move to Bali, I went back to just solo, and then just went heavy on the loop pedals.
Yeah.
Sort of thought, you know, how can I build up this sound?
Yeah.
And the loop pedals are a very strong part of my set and what I do, because I'll add beats with the guitar. I can't, what's it called? Someone told me that there was a specific name for that here when you're tapping on the guitar and adding beats.
Oh really?
I can't remember. Anyway, do that, build up the layers, got octave pedals to create a bass sound.
Yeah.
And then also have a separate loop pedal for my vocals, so I do a lot of harmonies.
Yeah.
Really enjoy the harmony thing with vocals.
Yeah.
So I'm usually, if I just play, like I'll play a track today, if it's just guitar and vocals, I usually feel very stripped back, because I kind of use my loop pedals a lot live as part of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who did you find? I know, like when I hear loop pedals, I think of 2 artists that come to mind who have used them very successfully, but you may not know of either. One is Priscilla On.
No, I don't know.
She's on Blue Note Records.
Okay.
And she plays guitar and harmonica, and it's a very stripped down sound. I'll play it, not today, but I'll certainly get it to you so you can check it out.
Yeah, great.
It's very tasteful and simple. But the other is a guitarist by the name of Phil Kagi.
Oh, okay.
And he's kind of...
Both USA?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Phil Kagi was, from what I understand, the story I heard was he used to be Jimi Hendrix's best friend.
Oh, yeah.
And Jimi Hendrix was asked on the Dick Cavett show back in the 60s, how's it feel to be the best guitarist in the world? And Jimmy simply answered, I don't know, you better ask Phil Kagi.
Wow.
So this guy, he's primarily instrumental guitar music, and he's used looping pedals with with many layers.
Gotcha.
I would say,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think that there's the level of tastefully using and overusing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a big point. I'll sort of play 3 or 4 hour sets with a lot of my shows, and the main thing you've got to remember always is use it to support what you're doing. Don't rely on it as your whole crutch, you know.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people use loop pedals and they sort of fall into this. They get hypnotised by their own loops, and then they get stuck in this rut, and the audience just sits there going, "Come on, mate,
Yeah.
let's do something else." And it can be a bit frustrating, and especially if they're standing there just staring at the pedals the whole time.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot better to use them in a way where people notice there's extra sounds happening, and the song sounds bigger, and they sort of think, "What? How is that happening?" Rather than this is obviously a loop pedal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be too obvious with it.
Yeah.
Or it becomes too much.
Yeah, I spent some time over the past couple of days listening to your music and checking out some of your live performances where you did use the loop pedals.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, you know, I really stepped away from it like that was pretty tastefully done.
Oh, cool.
You know, there was never a time where it was as if you built up this big sound of loop pedals that came crashing down on you.
Yeah,
You know, it was authentic and organic from beginning to end.
Yeah, nice. Oh,
Yeah.
that's good feedback.
Yeah, it was well balanced.
Nice.
Yeah. So, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you write your music? that's one of the things that I'm always intrigued by, is how you're able to convey your thoughts in art.
Sure. I guess I'm pretty big on improvising. So one thing I sort of, when I first noticed I loved singing, and believe me, I couldn't sing very well back then, but when I was around 15, I just started running down into the bush where I lived, and sitting in a cave where there's nice reverb, and just screaming my guts out. I just really got into expressing myself through singing, and I guess I improvised a lot, and just whatever I was feeling would come out. So that's always been a strong part of my writing, is that I will usually now just pick up the guitar and play, and a lot of my gigs actually I'll improvise a number of the songs, and then each time I play them again, they'll sort of form a little bit more, and maybe perhaps a chorus that I'm singing I'll notice works quite well, and whatever I'm feeling at that time starts to come out, and then I might go, okay, it's time to put that down, and I'll record it, listen to it back, and see what works, and then mould it a bit more, and then I'll focus on the lyrical content. But often I've already written the vocal patterns and the guitar parts before I really finalise the lyrics, because I improvise them over and over again until I feel all the inflections in the vocals in the right spots. And then I'll sit down and just go, right, now it's time to nail the actual lyrics themselves, which usually happens when I want to record the song, because you got to get the lyrics right. So that's often a way I write, is just by picking up and playing and singing, rather than specifically writing down, I'm going to go from A minor to G, and let's try, it's definitely not mathematical, put it that way.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it, and other times I'll be lying in bed and just outright hear a song in my head and say, that's a song I need to record. Like, there's a couple of songs on the album. One in particular, Went to the Water. It's quite a heavy rock song, but for literally 2 years, I had this sound in my head, this song in my head kept playing. So eventually I was like, has anyone ever heard this before? Because maybe I was getting it off the radio or something.
That's funny.
Yeah, then I realised it was just in my head. So with my ex-girlfriend, I was lying there one night in bed, and I was like, that song's in my head again. And she said, just get up and record it. So all right, I got up and laid it down just on my phone, and then recorded it properly, and eventually became a song, and it was on the album.
Cool. Yeah, I know. I was listening to it last night. I was actually rocking out to it for a while, and I find it very interesting. Everybody's artistic process, as we all are different, we tend to, I guess, operate similarly when it comes to music. And I've interviewed musicians, and they've said, it's Caroline Ferranti, who was in here last year. She said it's kind of like making a lightning sandwich, just waiting for the lightning to strike and slam it with bread. And other musicians are like, I heard this melody, and I just let it, I put it down and went back to it, and it became something.
And interestingly enough, and I've heard this from a lot of people, other writers as well, it's so often the song that you write literally in 2 minutes that sticks with other people. And there's something for me that if I go and see an amazing guitarist perhaps, and he's technically just profound, he mightn't have any emotion that I relate to, but I could, because he could be, technically he's all over it, and he's studied those notes for years, and he's done the scales, but I might listen to it and not be affected by it really, and walk away going, he was an incredible player, but not take it home with me in my heart.
Yeah.
But I might go and see someone else who just plays one chord and just sings around that chord from the heart, and just go, wow, I'm thinking about it for days. And so there's really something about that deep inner emotion that really shines, and you can see it in any sort of creative field, whether it's coming from a pure place. And so due to that, often the best songs are written when that pure place is exposed. And so often, which is frustrating at times, because often I've spent a lot of time working on a song, and that song hasn't really stuck with people. And then I'll have one moment at the end of a drunken night, and I'll get a bit teary or whatever it is, and I'll write a track on the spot, and I'll play it again, and that'll be the song that sticks with people. That will be the one that resonates with people. So it really is, it really does come, all sort of creative fields come down to a very emotional, pure place. You can sense it.
Yeah, as musicians, you know, you're being vulnerable live in the moment. You know, you're there purveying your thoughts and your abilities before an audience and waiting for a response or an interaction. And I think that's the thing that really appeals to me about live music. And it's not being in the stadium, but it's a matter of being in the control room or in an intimate setting where you can pour your heart out in the music.
Yeah.
And I can take that journey with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I can be changed by it, or I can be affected by it.
Yeah.
In a way that is resonant. And I think, you know, when you pick the surface and you hit that vulnerable spot, that's when the magic happens.
It really is.
Yeah.
And there's also I guess it's I don't know if it's a skill or just what it is, but that ability for an artist to translate what they do and feel in the bedroom when they're on their own in that emotional moment, to translate that to a wide audience, to be able to do that on stage or do that in the recording studio.
Yeah.
That's a really tough thing to do, and everyone battles with that. You know, if you're on the clock in a studio and you feel pressured, it's very hard to find that emotional place with that song again. And the artists that do that, they really stand out.
Absolutely.
I find, you know, an example, say Ben Harper in his early albums. I found when I listened to Ben Harper in those first few albums of his, it really did sound like I was listening to someone who was sitting alone in their bedroom, just pouring their heart out. It didn't give the sense at all that he was in a studio and someone was saying, "Okay, record now."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to a session player who will just walk in and do it more mathematically.
Where's the music?
Yeah.
You know, I've met session musicians that can just like write out tablature and then play it cold. And it sounds great.
Yeah.
But it's funny, you know. I guess our interests are kind of aligning. Because last night I was watching. I don't know if you've seen the movie Austin to Boston.
No.
But it has Ben Harper in it.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yeah. So it was, you know, it was neat to see.
DNA tests and Ben Harper,
I
mate,
know.
for connecting you.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the time here, and I know we only have a short time left.
Sure.
And I certainly want to give you the opportunity to play something for us so that we can
No problem.
check it out. So.
Well, thanks to Greensborough's cheap drinks. I'm a very dusty man this morning, and I don't think any musician will tell you that they're best in the morning, but I'll certainly hit one out for you and see how it goes.
Yeah, this is the wonderful challenge of Monday morning.
Straight into it?
Why don't you tell us what you're going to play?
Okay, so this is I'll play a simple little track called "Sitting on Top of the World," which I wrote after climbing a volcano, actually in Java, Indonesia, which is a number of hours journey from where I live in Bali. Beautiful, amazing spot. Climb it in the middle of the night, sit there and wait for the sun to rise.
Wow. And
I was sitting there smoking the best hash I've ever smoked in my life. And it was an amazing moment, and this is the song that came out of it, I guess. I went back to my little lodge and cranked this one out, and it stuck. Yeah. Sitting on top of the world, and all these thoughts reach out to catch my fall. Sitting on top of the world, and all these answers like gifts unwrap themselves. Sitting on top of the world, focusing on the sky to save from looking down. I'm sitting on top of the world, I better live a little now before I hit the ground. It's a long, long way to find my feet to know that I stand tall. And it's a long, long way to find a place to stop and let things grow. A long, long way to find a place to stop and let things grow. Sitting on top of the world, and all these thoughts add up to being high. sitting on top of the world. And nothing wrong with smiling before you wave goodbye. 'Cause it's a long, long way to find my feet, to know that I stand tall. And it's a long, long way to find a place to stop and let things grow. A long, long way to find a place to stop and let things. A long, long way to find a place to stop and let things. A long, long way to find a place to stop and let things grow.
Awesome. That
Thank
sounded
you.
really good.
Bit dusty, but you know,
Yeah. Well, hey, you
singing
know,
through the hangover.
it's the cost on Monday morning. You
Yeah,
know?
it certainly is.
Yeah.
You're a brave man getting here this early.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, this is Athron. You're playing Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, Thursday night.
Thursday.
Thursday night. Atlanta, it's possible gig in Atlanta on Friday night. I still need final confirmation. Nashville on Tuesday, and then moving down through Memphis, New Orleans, up San Antonio, right all the way across to San Diego and up into California.
Awesome.
So it's going to be a fun trip. A couple of good friends with me on the just for the journey. So
Cool.
Lots of chaos and manic behaviour.
Awesome. How can we follow your journey here or find your music?
You can look up Athron.